3rd and 7. Mayfield in trouble.
Just works for another one. Unbelievable. McNeil, Barnes, Onzarike, Malcolm Rodriguez. I mean, guys that just did not exist in the lineup late in the season. And we wonder how different things could have been.
He's going to go up the field. This is where he's made
You
his
just couldn't stop him.
Game, trying to get upfield. He recognizes him stepping
and what
up.
could have
You
been?
heard Dan Campbell talk.
Last season for the Detroit Lions was about what almost was. And unfortunately, this season for the Detroit Lions was about what could have been. Welcome back to the channel. I am your host, Johnny Gaz. Thank you for returning for another video. The Lions suffer a devastating loss in the divisional round of these playoffs to the Washington Commanders, and they're now left wondering what could have been of this 2024-25 NFL season. We're going to go through the top priorities for the Lions this offseason in a top 10 style format. We'll go from top to bottom, and I will tell you exactly what the Lions need to do this offseason to get to the ultimate goal of winning a Super Bowl. Let's go. Let's jump right into our top 10 list, and I will rank these in what I believe to be order of importance. And starting at number 10, I think you have to evaluate why the Lions failed yet again. The second season in a row, the Lions are not able to get to a Super Bowl with such high expectations. And yes, what was very hopeful in the past season and the loss to San Francisco in the NFC Championship game turned into more of an expectation here in 2024-25. And unfortunately, based on the expectation, this season was a failure. Now, I don't believe that to be the case. At 15-2 in a first-round bye, accomplishing a ton of goals that you had set out for yourself this season, I don't think the season in overall generality is a failure. But when the goal ultimately is to win a Super Bowl and you don't even get back to an NFC Championship game, unfortunately, you failed to get to the ultimate goal. And so because of that, my top 10 will start with evaluating why you haven't been able to get to a Super Bowl. And there's a lot of open-ended questions. My latest video just went over why the Lions lost to the Washington Commanders in the divisional round and why I felt the Lions could not complete that ultimate goal of winning a Super Bowl. So I think the first priority is to determine why that didn't happen and what needs to happen to move this forward. At number 9, I have the Lions needing to figure out what they're going to do with their backup quarterback role. We know that Jared Goff is solidified as their number 1, and we can argue in a future video how he finished this year and the elite status of Jared Goff and can they win a Super Bowl moving forward with him at the quarterback. But the truth is they have Hendon Hooker behind him, and they didn't even use him in a situation as a backup in the playoffs. You actually saw Teddy Bridgewater come in and spell Jared Goff in a short stint in that game against Washington, and it just leaves you thinking, well, what is the Hendon Hooker status, and ultimately, what is the backup quarterback situation for the Lions? My number 8 priority for the Lions this offseason is to evaluate where you stand with the current injury situation and where do they project from this point forward. You still have a ton of players on injured reserve. You're monitoring the status of guys like Aidan Hutchinson, Derek Barnes, so on and so forth, guys that left this season that you are expecting big things out of moving forward. Well, what are the timetables for these injuries, the returns, the rehabs, and where does that put you as you get into the offseason planning? I think that is a huge part of where the Lions move forward here in this offseason. Piggybacking off of determining where you're at with the injuries, I think once you've settled that, the next step is to determine what to do with this defense. They need to get the identity back for this Lions defense, and we know that really starts with Aidan Hutchinson, who they were hoping to get back on a Super Bowl run. Well, obviously now with the early departure in these playoffs, that is not a factor. So Aidan will have as much time to rehab and get himself healthy. Well, with that, the Lions need to reestablish a defensive identity. Number 6 is evaluating the current list of free agents that exist on the Lions' current roster. And there are 24 current unrestricted free agents. We won't go through that list here today. I will hit on a few spotlight players as we move through this list. But that really would be the next step. And number 6 in my list of offseason priorities is determine which one of these players you would like to bring back, which players will be factors in next season and beyond. Once the Lions determine who on their current list of free agents they want to keep, ultimately let go, they can then reevaluate the current roster and look to outside free agents to then supplement parts of their active roster. Obviously, that will be a much larger topic of discussion and will be a future video here on the channel, but that is something the Lions will have to consider as part of this process. Moving on to number 5 priority, kind of piggybacks off of this. I think there are 2 free agents that are high priority this offseason for the Lions, one of them being the cornerback, Carlton Davis, as well as the guard, Kevin Zeitler. Both will be unrestricted free agents at the end of this season. The Lions will have to determine whether or not the price point will be enough incentive to bring these players back. I think they got a lot of Carlton Davis in the cornerback position. He really was their number 1 corner up until the point he went out late in the season with a jaw injury, and Kevin Zeitler was your starting guard throughout the entire season. Again, he also went out with injury. Neither one of those guys played in what ended up being the season finale with the Washington Commanders. So the Lions will have a lot of tough decisions to make, and I think those are the 2 gentlemen you want to keep your eyes on here moving forward. My number 4 Detroit Lions offseason priority is their draft strategy. And to this point, they would have worked out their free agents, their coaching situation, a lot of contractual issues. So then it's about how do you supplement this amazing roster through the draft. And we know Brad Holmes and the organization has done very well in the draft the past several years, and we expect it to continue. They're a little limited on their draft picks this year, and then we'll be picking later on in the first round. I believe it's pick 28. So they're going to have to be very picky-choosy about who they bring into the organization and what holes do they choose to fill. At number 3, I have Aidan Hutchinson's contract as a top priority here. And obviously, we're coming off of that injury, but we're nearing the end of his rookie deal. And I think the longer the Lions wait on this, the more this contract will inflate or balloon. And Aidan Hutchinson has proven that he is one of the best defenders, if not a Defensive Player of the Year candidate when he is healthy. And the Lions expect him to come back healthy and ready to go in 2025. If I were in the Lions' shoes, I absolutely would get this deal done this offseason. I think, again, it prevents a more ballooned contract if you wait a year. I don't see Aidan Hutchinson's performance falling off, even coming off of this injury. So I think the Lions should act now, and will put them in a great position moving forward to hopefully get to a Super Bowl. And in my opinion, the number 2 top priority for the Detroit Lions this offseason is to settle the coaching hierarchy within the organization, or the trickle-down effect that's going to take place with all of these coaches leaving. And we'll talk about the coordinators here in just a minute, but with their departure, as well as other assistants we expect to take jobs throughout the NFL, the Lions will have to reorganize their current coaching staff. We know they have Dan Campbell at the helm, Sheila Ford Hamp leading the organization, and Brad Holmes as sort of that backbone in the front office. That will remain the same. The culture, this idea of grit, everything will hold true moving forward, but they will have to reset their coordinators and a lot of assistants to get this thing back on track. So to me, that is the second most top priority for the Lions this offseason. And the top priority for the Detroit Lions this offseason is replacing their offensive and defensive coordinators. Pretty obvious considering the recent news. As of this recording, Ben Johnson has already been named the next head coach of the Chicago Bears, and Aaron Glenn was in his second interview the day of this recording and expected to take the head coaching job for the New York Jets. With that being said, the Lions will be without both coordinators heading into this offseason. So top priority will be how the Lions address these vacancies. Dan Campbell has come out and said what he's looking for in replacing these coordinators, guys that they want to bring in so they don't lose their identity, especially on the offensive side. They want to bring in a coordinator that Jared Goff is comfortable with. They want to keep some of the terminology in place. You know, they have people on the current staff, I believe, that they're very comfortable with. And all indications, at least in my opinion, are that they will hire from within to keep the continuity and everything that Dan Campbell is talking about in hiring to replace their coordinators. This is a very important offseason for the Lions. Yes, it was a devastating loss in the divisional round, but they have a lot of good things ahead of them. Changing coordinators is a tough ask for any organization. As a matter of fact, there has not been a team in the history of the NFL to replace both coordinators and to go on and win a Super Bowl. But if any organization can power through, if any culture within the NFL can power through a changeover like this, I believe it is the Detroit Lions. So there it is, my top 10 list of priorities for the Lions this offseason. Do you agree? Did I miss on anything? Let me know down in the comments. What are your top priorities for the Lions this offseason? We will have future videos coming up outlining a lot of the top 10 we just laid out here. I believe All of these top 10s could be their own video themselves, and we will get into all of that this offseason. I think the biggest thing will be the changeover of the coordinators. We're going to hear very soon what happens with Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator for the Lions, soon to be New York Jets head coach. And then we will reevaluate where the Lions go from there. As the Lions make some moves and replace these coaches, I will come back at you with videos and reset as we move forward into this offseason. Thank you guys for coming along for another video. If you dig the vibe here at Johnny Gas Sports, make sure to hit that like button. It's the best free way to help out the channel. I'd also love it if you consider subscribing. We're now on the road to 3,000, thanks to you guys. And if you hit the notify bell, you don't miss any future videos. More than anything else, make sure to take care of yourself and that mental health. That is so important. I want to make sure you guys come back and see me on future videos. Thank you guys so much for your time. Have a fantastic week ahead. Go Lions.